America, how are you?
I want to introduce another guest we have, Robert Groden, who was celebrating his 18th birthday on the 22nd of November in 1963. He was profoundly touched by the president's death, and he desperately wanted to understand how it could have happened. For 2 years, he, like most Americans, believed in the official version, the Warren Commission version of what happened, but the day he first saw that 8mm Zapruder film, that amateur film that was made, that was the day he stopped believing.
I welcome this kind of examination.
We came,
and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build.
A new world order. New world order.
we saw.
If suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe.
Always talk to you like they're the best.
And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House!
He died. He died.
But that's a wicked woman.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
You can keep it. Period. 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 They are the focus of evil in the modern world. It's a catastrophe.
Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome.
This is the Midnight Rider News Podcast. Hello, America and the world. Welcome to the Midnight Rider News Show. I'm St. Patrick, your friendly neighborhood host, traipsing through the trials and travails that have so tempestuously and untruthfully been blasted into your eyes, ears, and minds by the state-sponsored talking heads, court historians, and textbook conglomerates that control information today. Tonight we have episode 031, Robert Groden and the JFK Assassination. The opening tonight was from Good Night America, hosted by Geraldo Rivera on March 6th, 1975. Wow, it doesn't seem like 42 years have passed, but they have, and here we are tonight discussing the JFK assassination with dedicated researcher Robert Groden. I can't wait. Just how dedicated is he, you ask? Well, wait until you hear this story. Robert Groden will be here with us in the midnight hour. But first, a little cleaning of the castle. Our Facebook page is at Midnight Rider News Show, and that's Midnight Rider News Show. Please share this episode. It really does matter to us, and we thank you a lot if you have. Our Twitter is MWN_ST Patrick. We are linked in at ST Patrick, and our email remains midnightridernews@gmail.com. The free archives of the Midnight Rider News Show are at midnightridernews.com, but you can also find them on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and your favorite podcast providers. This is the 4th episode of our first annual JFK month. We want to again thank Joseph Green, St. John Hunt, and William Matson Law for appearing. The feedback, phenomenal. And rounding out JFK month, and we're excited about this, we're going to have Gary Fannin, Ralph Epperson, and Ken Thomas. And we may just drop in a little surprise as well, so stay tuned. We'll be right back with Robert Groden. What did the CIA know about Lee Harvey Oswald, and why did they keep it secret for decades? Who was James Jesus Angleton, and how did his hunt for a mole within the agency change the hunt for JFK's real killers?
Hi, this is Jefferson Morley, author of CIA and JFK, The Secret Assassination Files, and the upcoming book, The Ghost, The Secret Life of CIA Spy Master James Jesus Angleton. If you want to know what was contained within the CIA's files and Lee Harvey Oswald, as well as the role James Angleton played in the Kennedy-era CIA, listen to episode 14 of Midnight Rider News Show and visit jfkfacts.org today.
Robert J. Groden was born on November 22nd, 1945. As you heard Geraldo explain in the opening clip, Robert was celebrating his 18th birthday on November 22nd, 1963, the day President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Groden served as a photographic consultant for the House Select Committee on Assassinations and testified before the Rockefeller Commission, which was looking into CIA activities. As an employee of a film processing company, Groden was able to make a private copy of the famous Zapruder film, which was shown to the public for the first time on Good Night America in 1975. He's the co-author of JFK, A Case for Conspiracy, and High Treason, the Assassination of President John F. Kennedy, which is also known as High Treason 1. He's the author of The Killing of a President, Complete Photographic Record of the JFK Assassination, The Search for Lee Harvey Oswald, and JFK Absolute Proof. He's receiving the inaugural Garrison Lane Award at this year's JFK Assassination Conference in Dallas, and this is Robert Groden. Hello, Robert. How are you this evening?
I'm fine, ST. How are you doing?
I am well. Thanks for being on the show tonight.
It's always a pleasure.
Let's begin with your interest in photography. Now, you've long been known as one of the photographic experts of the Kennedy assassination world. When did your interest in photography and pictures begin?
Well, since I was a child, I've always been fascinated by the idea of capturing moments in time, which is what photography is, pictures are. Thinking back to those treasures that we all have of our childhoods and parents which may be gone now, it brings back a lot of really terrific memories. I recently discovered that I had a cousin that I didn't know I had, and she found me through the internet, and we've become kind of close. And she was the granddaughter of my great aunt, and we get to talk from time to time, and she's had pictures of me and my mother and other family members that I never even knew existed. So those little bits of memory and time are fascinating to me. And when I discovered that there were so many photographs relating to the assassination of President Kennedy, I was just magnetized by them. I just went right to them and started archiving them and collecting them. And through my love of photography and my work as a photo analyst, there's just no way I could stay away from it. It was just a natural thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what's the origin of the interest that you have in the JFK assassination? When do you first remember being hooked?
Within days, actually. Before the week was out, I was already archiving everything I could find, reading everything I could find, being fascinated by the fact that the assassination itself had been filmed, not by one, not by two, but by actually 5 different people. I was fascinated by it, and I was intrigued as to why these films were all being hidden from public view. And they were, and until a certain amount of things happened, they'd still be hidden from public view. The people that had them had no intention of ever releasing them. And I'm not just making that up, that's true. Life magazine had the Zapruder film, UPI had Nixon, much more. The Bronson film, the FBI had seen but ignored, pretending it didn't matter. And the 5th one, the Oliver film, they did have, and probably still do, but they denied it. They claimed that they didn't have it, but we have an FBI document now which says that the film taken by her was not retained by the FBI. That they had it, but they didn't keep it, they said. That makes no sense whatsoever. Going back just one step, the president was shot on my 18th birthday. I was playing hooky from high school that day. I was at home, and the TV was on in the other room, and we heard the original first reports that the president had been shot. This is before his death had been announced. We knew he'd been shot. We didn't know how seriously. We didn't know that the shots were fatal. We found that out in about an hour, but that's where it all began.
You were definitely early in, a first-generation researcher on the case, and one of the group that Randy Benson called the Searchers. Now, when did you learn that there were others out there doing similar work, and when did you begin meeting and corresponding with them?
Through the years, I found out there were other books being written, great books, like the Whitewash series, starting with Whitewash by Harold Weisberg, Accessories After the Fact by Sylvia Marr, Rush to Judgment by Mark Lane, Forgive My Grief by Penn Jones, and others. They just started coming out one after the other. Most of them back then were extremely accurate, and it was kind of difficult for these people to write this stuff because they had no one else to rely on. It was their own investigations. I started working with the photographic evidence, and that sort of just naturally blended into the medical evidence. And back in 1975, I actually got to write some articles for Argosy Magazine, Rolling Stone, and others relating to the Kennedy case. And it just opened up. I became an author relating to the case, which is something I never thought would ever happen. But that's where it began, and I just kept staying with it, and even to this day, I'm fighting to keep the truth from from the fiction, and there's tons of fiction on both sides of this case. Yeah, it's kind of sad, because people that claim to be on our side, you have to question, are they really on our side? People who claim that the Zapruder film is faked or phonied in some way, that Oswald was on the first floor of the depository, that the driver turned around and shot the president, the shots came from the storm drain, crazy stuff like that. Yeah, we have enough truth to a real conspiracy. We don't need fake stuff. There's people out there that are doing it.
Well, no, I was going to ask you about that, actually. I was going to ask you about the Alchins picture. So the theory that it is Oswald in the doorway is one that has grown in popularity over, say, the last decade or so. But as an expert in photography, what is it that you see in the Alchins 6 photo?
Well, quite frankly, it's certainly not Oswald. It's a fellow by the name of Billy Nolan Lovelady. And Bill Lovelady looked so much like Oswald that a week before the assassination, Lovelady's wife turned up to the depository to bring him lunch or something of that nature, and saw a guy standing across the room, and she called out to him, and he didn't answer. As it turns out, it wasn't Billy at all, it was Oswald. That's how much they looked a lot alike. Now, the man Billy Lovelady was about 11 years older than Oswald, and he was balding. Oswald was not yet balding. His hairline is totally different than the man in the doorway. When I started working for the House Assassinations Committee back in I guess I started working for him in about late 76, early 77. The very first witness that we went to get testimony from was, in fact, Billy Lovelady. He was living in Denver at the time, and the House Committee flew me and somebody else, Ken Bruton, a senior investigator for them, out to Denver to talk to Billy. And he was very nice. Billy Lovelady was very nice, and he spent some time with us. And we showed him the picture of the doorway, the Alchins 6 photograph. And in that photograph, he's standing there in the doorway looking at the crowd, looking at the president. And we asked him if it was him, because back then we all thought it was Oswald. And Lily said, "No, that's me. That's me." And he remembered being there and what he saw, and he spoke about it. He said, "Would you like to see the shirt I was wearing?" And we said, "Yes, please." He still had it. He had it wrapped in plastic, and he actually put it on for us. And I have pictures of myself with him, and he's wearing the same shirt he was wearing that day. He said it was him. His wife said it was him. There's no question about the fact that it is Oswald. I mean, no question about that it isn't Oswald. It's definitely Bill Lovelady. But there's a couple of people, there's at least 3 people I know that are trying to make a lot of money off of saying that it's Oswald in the doorway, and are promoting that and convincing hundreds and hundreds of other people. Look, it would be great if it was Oswald. I would love for it to be Oswald, because it would show that he had an airtight alibi. As it turns out, he did have an alibi, but we'll talk about that later on. In any case, what these people are doing, one of them is an Australian, one of them is a guy from up north, and these are people that know that. Let me say it this way. Okay, an f-stop is the degree of opening of the aperture within the lens of a camera, and people who deal with photography know this and deal with this all the time. And what I say about people like these two, who I'm not even going to name, I wouldn't do them the honor of naming them. They don't know an f-stop from a bus stop. And it's the truth. These people know nothing about photography. They're inserting themselves into the Kennedy case when they have absolutely no business being there, and the stuff that they're writing and talking about is so crazy, it's only doing us harm. They're saying things that are so easily disproven that the other side must be laughing their rear ends off.
And speaking of Lee Oswald, okay, so let's assume that it was not Oswald as the man in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository.
Okay.
You still believe Oswald is innocent, so what is his alibi, and what is the most convincing case that can be made for his innocence?
Well, it'd be hard to pick the most convincing of all of them, but the one for me that makes the most sense, the one that I believe the most, is because of the personal involvement. My personal involvement is back in 1970, I found a woman by the name of Geraldine Reed. Now, let's remember that for a second, because one of these two clowns that I was talking about before says that it wasn't Geraldine Reed, it was another woman whose name right now I can't even think of, but it's someone who was actually down on the sidewalk in front of the depository. Geneva, oh God, I can't think of her last name, but it was somebody else. It was somebody completely different. Anyway, I found her, and she was a little old lady. She was frightened. She had worked in the depository on the second floor across from the lunchroom where Oswald was during the shooting. And what had happened was, about a minute before the shots were fired, Oswald walked into her office and asked her for change of a dollar bill. He wanted to use the Coca-Cola machine. Now, back then, the machines didn't make change of a dollar bill the way they do today. So she got the change box out, and Oswald said to her, "No pennies, please, just nickels, dimes, and quarters." Well, that's an important point, which I didn't understand at the time. And here's the issue. Oswald was a diehard Southerner. He did not want any money that had pictures of Abraham Lincoln on it. That was something that we didn't know, that I didn't know was an issue. But somebody else who was involved with payroll there said that Oswald never wanted $5 bills. He wanted 1s, 10s, 20s, and so on. But the thing is that was something which went right by me. A lot of people don't like pennies because they weigh a lot when there's a lot of them, and they're just a pain in the neck sometimes. But sometimes they're a necessary pain in the neck. In any case, she's counting out the change into Oswald's hands as the shots go off. She would have testified, we assume, had Oswald lived and stood trial. Of course, that didn't happen. Oswald then took his change, went across the hallway into the snack room, put his money into the Coca-Cola machine, got his Coke, and 72 seconds after the shooting, Oswald was faced with a police officer, and the police officer stuck a gun into his stomach, into Oswald's stomach, and with these two guys was Oswald's boss, Roy Truly, and the cop asked him, said, "Do you know this guy?" And he says, "Yeah, his name is Lee Oswald. He works for me." And they told Oswald at the time that the president had been shot, and then they went on upstairs toward the roof, sixth floor roof, what have you. And now Oswald walked back through the office past Geraldine Reed and down into the street and left the depository. Well, he didn't leave right away. There were 25 people locked out of the depository, and they weren't allowed back in, and they were told to go home and not come back till Monday because they were going to be closed in honor of the president's passing. Anyway, that's where that began. That's one piece of important evidence. Another piece of important evidence is the government says all the shots were fired from the sixth floor easternmost window of the Texas School Book Depository building. Well, the thing is, from the sixth floor to get down to the second floor in the lunchroom, where Oswald was seen by Marion Baker, the police officer, and Roy Truly, Oswald's boss, to get down there, he had to go down the stairs. Now, there were two women walking down the stairs, Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles, at that time, and nobody passed them, not going up, not going down, nothing. So Oswald, that's another bit of evidence that Oswald could not have done it. Later that day, Oswald was questioned by the police. His statements that were recorded by the press and by the police. He said, "No, sir, I didn't shoot anybody, and I committed no acts of violence," things of that nature. And those statements were applied to psychological stress evaluators and voice stress analyzers, and showed that he was telling the truth, that he didn't shoot anybody, and he didn't commit any acts of violence. Oswald's fingers and cheeks were tested with nitrates. He was tested for nitrates on his hands and his cheeks, and there was none on his cheeks, there was a pattern on his hands that was inconsistent with firing the rifle. If you're firing a rifle, you can end up with a lot of nitrates on one hand and virtually none on the other. Oswald had about an equal amount on both, number one. Number two, you can get nitrates on your hands from the ink of the on the cartons in the depository, the things that Oswald handled for his job all the time. If he'd gone to the bathroom and not washed his hands, he would have had nitrates on his hands too. So that doesn't really make that much difference, but the pattern does. These are all bits of evidence. Everyone who knew Oswald said that he had had never made this negative statement about President Kennedy ever, and that he admired the president and his family and like that. So there's all this evidence and lots more. But yeah, that's the evidence that Oswald didn't do it. Now, there are three issues that relate to the case specifically. Number one is, was there a conspiracy? Number two, was Oswald part of that conspiracy, or was Oswald a lone assassin? And the other possibility and probability, in fact, what I believe, Oswald had nothing to do with it at all. He was set up. They needed a patsy, and we now know that it was a government agency that got him the job in the depository in the first place, and that's why he was set up.
Exactly, and we also now know that the CIA had a 201 file on Oswald for at least 2 years.
Yeah, and it was a CIA personnel file. It's called a 201 file. And yeah, they had been following Oswald for years. In my current book, the latest book, which is temporarily out of print right now, called JFK Absolute Proof, there are 1,000 photographs in it. But some of those things that are in the book are a 2.5-page document written by the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and it was a letter in response to the director of the Secret Service, the head of the Secret Service, stating that Oswald didn't shoot the president and they knew it, that Oswald was a CIA agent, was trained by the CIA at Camp Perry in Virginia, that he was given the job of going to the Soviet Union. It was an assignment. He didn't defect. He never defected. We knew that. The other side in this case, talk about Oswald defecting to the Soviet Union, that he was a communist. Oswald was not a communist. He never said he was a communist. He did, as part of his cover, say he was a Marxist or Marxist-Leninist, whatever. I don't know what the major difference would be, but the point of the matter is that this document, this 2.5-page document, we call it the smoking gun document, talks about everything about Oswald's past, and that they know he didn't do it, and that he did work for the government. Now, we know that he was an FBI informant, and his payroll number was S172. We've known that since the 1960s. That's nothing really new. But again, to try to blame this on Oswald, it makes no sense whatsoever. He was a patsy. The real sad situation is that he was blamed for this and turned into the ultimate villain of all time, when he probably had absolutely nothing to do with this. Did he have prior knowledge of that was going to happen? Maybe. A week before the assassination, he turned up at the local FBI office and left them a warning note. And that's what it was described, a warning note. What the FBI said was, well, it was a warning saying that if you don't leave my wife alone, I'm going to blow up your office. Well, actually, I think, and I've always believed that warning note was a warning saying, hey, the president's going to be shot. And this is what's going to happen. Do something about it. Anyway, that's the history of the case.
Robert, I've spoken to researchers such as Ralph Epperson and John Lear and Lynn Kolodny, Al Cuppett, guys who did most of their research in the 70s and 80s. I'm fascinated with this process of research and how it's changed over time. I mean, the internet explosion of the late 90s, it really ushered in a new era of research and especially historiography. I think many forget that before the dawn of the internet age, you had to make expensive long-distance phone calls, you had to find affordable Xerox machines at local offices or libraries, that you had to track people down call to call or link by link, and that you had to drive thousands of miles in total simply to have live conversation. Now, it was certainly a different era of research, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. I went on some trips that were over 3,000-mile round trips. to talk to a single person. Back when I first released the film to the assassination on national television, I was invited to Washington, D.C. countless times, and sometimes I would go down there to talk to one person, and it would take all day back and forth, or sometimes 2 days. And the thing is that raising the support in the House of Representatives for the creation of the House Assassinations Committee was one of the most rewarding things I ever had a chance to do. Getting to go down to Washington for an entire day to sit in the office of in the House of Representatives to talk to the Speaker of the House and present an entire slide presentation and film presentation for him. You know, this sort of thing was a piece of history, and I was very, very proud to be a piece of that history. And will we ever know the whole truth? I don't know. I'd like to see that we would, but the fact that we got the case reopened after it had been dead in the water since the Shaw trial in New Orleans was a miracle, an absolute miracle.
Now, I'd like to know how you got involved with the House of Representatives and the House Select Committee on Assassinations. But what I want to say here is that I think most people don't realize that the last time the House of Representatives made a statement on the case, they stated that it was a conspiracy.
You're absolutely right. They did. The way it all began was this. I appeared on a TV show called Goodnight America on ABC TV in March of 1975. Within days, I was invited by the Virginia congressional delegation to come down to the House of Representatives and present the evidence to them directly, in person. And I did that, and we had a long, long time of questions and answers, in excess of an hour. They wanted to know this and that and the other thing, but the question that kept coming up is, why weren't we able to see this? Why was this stuff suppressed? Why wasn't it in the newspapers, on TV? And to my absolute amazement, 2 days later, Congressman Thomas Downing of Virginia introduced legislation to reopen the case, and that led to the direct creation of the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And Congressman Downing himself personally asked me if I would be a staff photographic consultant to the committee. And of course I agreed, and spent the next 3 years from the time that the committee was created until it disbanded as their staff photographic consultant. I was one of the first people hired and one of the last to go. So that was really something, to be a part of the history of this case.
That had to be amazing to watch history unfold.
Oh, it was. I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
So in March of 75, you end up with a, let's just say, copy of the Zapruder film, which you show on Goodnight America with Geraldo Rivera. What's the origin of that film?
Well, I'm the one who made it. I worked for a company in New York. We brought the original Zapruder film, the 8mm film, by Life magazine because, well, they said they were planning on doing something with it. They wanted to see how the resolution and clarity would hold up if we blew it up from 8mm to 35mm. The company I worked for had done the work on a film called Woodstock about the rock situation in upstate New York, and we were the only people that could blow up regular 8mm to 35mm in one step. So that's what we did. And as we did it, let's just say an extra copy was made that Life didn't know about.
Okay, we can absolutely accept that. So, the Zapruder film. Who is Abraham Zapruder? How did he get the idea to shoot film on that day? What equipment did he use? And how long did he have the Zapruder film, or the film that is now known as the Zapruder film, in his possession?
Well, here's how it began. November 22nd, 1963, Zapruder went to work, and he worked across the street from the book depository. The company was called Jennifer Juniors, and Mr. Zapruder went to work without his camera. And his secretary said to him, Mr. Z, the president's going to be here. Why don't you have your camera? You should go home and get it. And she talked him into it. And he went back home. He picked up his 8mm Bell & Howell Director Series camera, a copy of which I have sitting right in front of me right here in my living room. And he had the film. He had one side of the film photographing his family in their backyard and things of that nature, personal stuff. And then he turned the film around, and it was facing the other direction to shoot the second half of the film. It was double rank 8, shooting one side, turning it over, shooting the other side. And the second side begins with and ends with the now famous Zapruder film. Mr. Zapruder came down last moment into Dealey Plaza, climbed up on a cement thing at the end of a retaining wall, and was shooting downward toward the main first Houston Street, then Elm Street. He filmed the beginning of the motorcade. He got the lead motorcycles. He didn't know where the president's car was going to be within the motorcade. So he started filming the lead motorcycles, and he was filming, and he realized that the manual wind of the camera was running down, and still no president. So he took the camera down from his eyes and started to wind the camera, manually wind the camera. It was not a battery-operated camera. And when he put the camera back up to his eyes and started filming, the president had completed the turn onto Elm Street, and the president was photographed from time where he was waving to the crowd before the first shot was fired, and Zapruder, through an amazing bit of history, kept filming until the car went underneath the underpass at the west end of Dealey Plaza. And that's how the film was made. He went back to his office, had his secretary or somebody from his office put the film into his safe, and he called the FBI and said that he had filmed the assassination. The FBI showed up at his office and wanted the film. He said, "Go to hell," essentially. He wasn't going to give it to him. And they said, "Well, we got to process the film." So they went. They went to the local TV station. He knew somebody at the station who was involved in the film department and tried to get the film processed. Well, they could do black and white news footage, but they couldn't do Kodachrome. So Zapruder and FBI people all went out to the Kodak lab near Love Field, and the film was processed, and they made 3 copies of it at a place called Jameson Film Lab. And one of the duplicate copies, apparently, they say it was the original, but it couldn't have been, and there's a reason why I know it couldn't have been. It was one of the duplicates that was made that day, and they projected that, and they saw that Zapruder had caught the entire assassination sequence on film, and that becomes the most important 26 seconds of history ever photographed at any time in history. And Life magazine bought it a few days later, bought complete rights to it for essentially what ended up being $250,000, and payable over in 6 payments through the years. But Life magazine, after paying all of that, published individual frames in several issues of the magazine, but never ever released the film as a film, never in motion. So, needless to say, when I first saw the film, when I had a first-generation copy in my hand and projected it, I was shocked, absolutely horrified. And I read a few people. You mentioned before about original authors and researchers. I was very careful about not letting too many people know I had it, because I thought it was in great danger if it became known that I did have this. What it comes down to essentially is there was a conspiracy to kill the president, and I was the only one who could prove it. So I kept quiet about it for several years. But some of the few people that I told about it and showed them the film pleaded with me to show it at a symposium on the 10th anniversary of the assassination at Georgetown University. And I did, and it was just the incredible hit of the entire presentation, the entire symposium. But nothing happened. There was no news coverage, and it just sort of went away. A few years later...
Wait, I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah.
But I think this has to be asked at this point. Who did you tell?
Harold Weisberg, Jerry Polikoff, Richard Sprague, Not very many, less than a half a dozen people in the world. I knew about it, obviously. My wife knew about it, but that was essentially it. So I was asked to, in 1975, to present which was like a year and a half later, presented at a symposium in Boston called The Politics of Conspiracy. And I released the film but here we had a lot of press coverage, and it became a national news event. And it just all took off like crazy. Dick Gregory was there, who just passed away a few weeks ago. He said, we got to do more with this and just show it here. I said, what else are we going to do with it? He said, well, let's talk about it. We went up to his room, my wife, myself, and a few friends, and we decided what we're going to do is present it as evidence of conspiracy to the Rockefeller Commission. And we did. Dick was scheduled to present evidence to them anyway. It was already set up. So we did it. I actually agreed to do it, and he flew us first to Chicago to hold a major press conference and let them know about the film and the fact that it existed and that I was going to make it available. And we then flew to Washington, D.C. in the middle of a massive blizzard. I was testifying before the Rockefeller Commission on CIA excesses within the United States, and testified for an entire day about this. While I was testifying over there, we got a call from Geraldo Rivera's office. Geraldo wanted to know if I would agree to show the film on his show, Good Night America. And I agreed to do it, and I went to their offices a few days later, and we duplicated my film for them. It was scheduled to show a few weeks later on the show on ABC. Now, there was a problem. And there were two problems, basically. Number one was the fact that Life magazine threatened to sue if we showed it. That was part one. But part two is the fact that the Zapruder film is shot at 18.3 frames per second, essentially 18 frames per second. All of the film chains, the telecine film chains that they had at ABC and everywhere else at the time, the professional stuff was all at 24 frames per second. So the film would go by way too fast for the human eye to really understand what it was seeing. So I agreed that what I would do is I would make a special copy of the film and double frame it, that is, shoot each frame twice to slow it down. So it would be going slower than normal speed. They didn't want to take the time and energy to do it, and they didn't want to pay for the photographic lab work. So what they did is they took something called the slow-mo disc, which was used in those days to slow down football things that were happening in games. And that slowed it down, but unfortunately it degraded the image massively. If the Zapruder film is a 10 quality, this brought it down to about a 5 or a 4. It really degraded it. But this is something that the country, the world, had never seen. And it was important. It was, as Geraldo said, the execution of the President of the United States. As I said, within days, I was invited to present the evidence before Congress, and that's when the history of all of this changed.
As you are keenly aware, Robert, there's been much debate regarding the possible alterations that were made to the original Zapruder film. Do you believe it was altered in any way at any time?
The only way it was altered, and I stand by this now, and I always will, unless I see something else, which I have not seen in the last 54 years. And that is the fact that the film was, in fact, cut twice by Life magazine. The first time was when the first shot was fired. And it didn't hit anybody, but the president responded to it. And those frames were cut out when he turns his head and looks toward the grassy knoll and stops waving. There was a second splice at around frame 210, which is when the Warren Commission established the first shot could have been fired from that window because there was a tree in the way. Those are the only two things that are wrong with the film. Except for that, it's absolutely intact. There is no fakery whatsoever. And I can't say that strongly enough, because these idiots out there that say that the film is faked know nothing about it. They never, ever, any one of them held the original film. I've had it in my possession 3 times. I've handheld it, wound it down. I'm the one who discovered the first splice in the film, We all knew that the second splice was there because when the Warren Commission photographed and released in Volume 18 of their volumes several frames, they started right after the first splice and continued all the way through the second splice, which was very obvious when you see it, and kept going to frame 334, which is the last frame before you can clearly see what happened to the president's head. Frame 335 is the first clear frame after the fatal headshot, and they stopped one frame, 1/18th of a second before that.
Now, when you watch the Zapruder film, as many Americans either did in 1975 on the Good Night America show, or when most of us saw it in the JFK film in 1991, there is obviously a shot that comes from the right and to the front. But when Dan Rather of CBS News came on earlier and said that he watched the film, he said that the shot was clearly from behind.
That's what he said. He was lying, or stupid, or mistaken, or blind. But there's one thing in the film shows, no matter where the shot was fired from, is when the president was hit, he was thrown to the rear and to the left. That shot came from the right front, but assuming that we didn't know that, he was thrown to the rear and to the left. Dan Rather got on TV and said that the president was thrown violently forward. That was an absolute lie. It didn't happen, and he would have to be blind to think that. Unless the film was being shown backwards, what can I say? Anyway, that's the important thing, and that's why the film was suppressed for all those years. And I still maintain to this day that if I hadn't had the opportunity to release the film back in 1975, the world would still not have seen the film to this very day. And the case would never have gotten reopened. There never would have been a House Assassinations Committee. There never would have been an Assassination Records Review Board. Well, the world changed with that showing, and I'm very, very proud of that.
And you have every right to be, absolutely. Now, I had seen the Zapruder film in full in the film JFK, the 1991 Oliver Stone film, as I think many people my age have. Now, I recently learned, Robert, that you had a large role in the film JFK, both in the script and in the actual film itself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had heard that you played multiple roles, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I played four different roles in the film. I play a doctor performing the tracheotomy on President Kennedy in the life-saving efforts in Parkland Hospital. I played a projectionist in the courtroom showing the Zapruder film during the Clay Shaw trial in New Orleans. And by the way, it was Kevin Costner himself who had suggested that I play that role. I was really honored. I play a photographic analyst, not a photo analyst, a photo technician creating a phony backyard picture of Oswald holding a rifle and wearing a gun and holding up two socialist newspapers. And the fourth role I play is as another doctor standing next to Mrs. Kennedy when the body is put into the casket. Those are the four roles I played in the movie. I also ended up writing quite a bit of the script, the final script, because there's a job called punch-up, man. When you punch up a script, where you add stuff to it, adding dialogue, finding errors in it, and straightening those out. And I did a lot of that for the entire filming of the movie. I was supposed to end up with 7 separate credits in the film. I ended up with 1. But I'm very proud to have been part of it. With all the parts that I did do with it, and I'm not going to even go into that; would take too much time. But Oliver Stone invited me to come down to Dallas and give them the $10 tour, as it were, of Dealey Plaza and the areas relating to the assassination and the follow-up and the cover-up. And I did that, and we spent, I think it was 2 weeks down there. And Oliver asked me if I would want to be part of the making of this film, which was originally called Project X. It ended up being called JFK. But we tried to keep it as quiet as we could. But somebody in California leaked a copy of the script to the press, and that nearly killed the entire project. The film was reviewed, if you take my word for it, reviewed in the editorial pages, not the entertainment pages, and before even a single frame of the film had been shot. So, yeah, believe me, the government did not want this movie made.
Now, someone recently told me that the person who leaked out the script was Harold Weisberg.
No, it wasn't. It was somebody. It was somebody else. But so the people who actually did do it, the lady who apparently is the one who released the film to the Washington Post, I believe it was, just recently passed away. But Harold was blamed for it, but he didn't do it. He was against the film being made. He disagreed with a lot of what was being said in it, but I cannot see Harold having done that. Harold Weisberg, who is the dean of the assassination researchers, is my oldest son's godfather. We were very, very close for a long time. He could be a curmudgeon, no question about it, but he uncovered a great deal of evidence, and he was about 95 to 99% right. He wasn't 100% right. There were a few things he was wrong about, but very, very few. And the government destroyed his life. He was at the time he was a chicken farmer in Hyattstown, Maryland, and they redirected jet flights over his farm and flew the planes very low, so they scared the heck out of the chickens. And eventually he had to sell it, and he moved to Frederick, Maryland, where he lived until he died. But he was something else. He wrote 6 books on political assassinations, 5 of them about President Kennedy, 1 about Martin Luther King. I learned a lot from him, and he was like a second father to me for many years. And I was really, really sad when he died.
They not only made it hard on Harold Weisberg, but they've made it pretty hard on you as well, Robert. Now, for those who may not know, you can find Robert Groden very accessible outside the Texas School Book Depository near the Grassy Knoll every weekend. He's very kind, he answers questions, and he's just there continuing the search for the truth. But Dallas city officials have made it very hard on you, haven't they?
Well, you could say that. I moved down there 25 years ago, and set up on the Grassy Knoll to let people know there was an alternative to the official fiction. The official fiction being that Oswald was a lone assassin, that there was no conspiracy. They started to harass me and ticket me in Dealey Plaza soon after I moved down there. And as of 7 years ago, I had been ticketed 84 times, every one of which was eventually thrown out of court. Because I hadn't broken any law.
84 times?
84 times. You figure after the second or third time they would have realized that the court was not going to convict me for anything, but they kept harassing me anyway. Then, over the years, they actually threw me in jail twice. They arrested me and threw me in jail twice. And the first time I let them get away with it, we had an agreement from the city prosecutors they would leave me alone. And for a few years they actually did. And then they started up again, and they threw me in jail a second time. I realized it was never going to stop, so I sued the city. And I sued the 6th Floor Museum, by the way, and the reason why that happened was we found out through discovery that the 6th Floor Museum were the ones who were pumping the city on to get them to do it. So it was actually both of them. The 6th Floor Museum is making a fortune lying to people and saying that that Oswald was a lone assassin firing all the shots from their building. It's a lie. It just never happened. They knew it didn't happen, but they're making way too much money for them to tell the truth. And the city owns the building. Actually, the county owns the building. And they would be shut down if they told the truth. So they don't dare do it. Now, I'm down there in the plaza. I'm on the Grassy Knoll every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, unless it's pouring rain or snowing. And I've been doing this now for a quarter of a century, just down there. I've been working on the case for 54 years, but I've been down in the plaza for 25. And rain or snow is the only thing that will keep me out of there. But I'm there I've been there in 20 to 25 degree weather. I've been there in 112 degree weather. Everything in between. And I'm not looking to be patted on the back for it. Back in 1965, I think it was, I went down to the Arlington National Cemetery and visited the president's grave for the first time and made a solemn promise to him that I would do everything within my power, as long as it took, to try to find the truth of what happened. And I would not stop until the truth was all known. And for the last half a century. That's what I've been doing. And when you think about it as a half a century, it's mind-boggling that anybody could do something like this for so long. I had never had a paying job for more than maybe 2 or 3 years, but I've devoted my entire adult life since I was 18 years old to trying to find out what happened to President Kennedy. And next week I'm going to be 72.
72, wow. And this happened on your 18th birthday. It's just an incredible story. Now, you've told me before that there are other people out there on the knoll, and I've been there and I've seen them myself. And you said they've had no arrests?
Yeah, well, they're not really on the knoll. They're in the plaza. They walk around the sidewalks and whatever. Some of them have drug problems. Some of them have drinking problems. Some of them are homeless. And they sell stuff that is really substandard to the public, and let them know that there's, and most of them let them know that there's a conspiracy. Some of them lie and say that Oswald acted alone. But the thing is, none of them have any credibility, so they're all left alone. I'm a problem for the city because, of my history in the case, and that scares them. The real problem came on the 50th anniversary. Just a few years ago in Dealey Plaza, the day of the worst snowstorm or ice storm that the city had seen in countless years. And that happened on the anniversary itself. They set up these bleacher stands in the plaza and had various idiots from the local city government speak their piece about the president's memory. Never once, and I'll repeat that, never once did they mention the assassination. Certainly not the conspiracy, but not even the assassination itself. The reason why we were there, they never mentioned it, not once, including the mayor. In any case, in all of that, they didn't want any mention of the assassination. Now, some of you who may have been to Dealey Plaza have perhaps noticed in the middle of Elm Street that there is an X at the exact spot where President Kennedy was killed.
I've seen that.
Well, I'm the one who put the X there. And I put it down there a quarter of a century ago, and we keep it upgraded as it wears down. We just apply it again and so on and so forth. But the city did not want that X there. So what they did is they dug up that whole area of Elm Street, the entire thing for a couple of 100 feet, and repaved it to get rid of the X. They didn't have to do. They could have scraped the X up, but when the city was asked why they did that, they said, well, we didn't want anyone to trip over the X.
Oh, what? That is ludicrous. The X is the thickness of either paint or tape.
Not even 1 millimeter high, and they were afraid someone was going to trip over it. That's the kind of garbage we've had to put up with the city. And I told them that I was going to put the X back down there again, and before the afternoon was over, I put another X down there, and have maintained it ever since. I got calls from the local TV stations wanting to know if I knew anything about the X. I said, yeah, I put it there. I told them I was going to do it, and I did. And it's still there to this day, and it's become an iconic X. And the Dallas Observer did some stories on it, and the two of the local TV stations did. I don't remember whether the Dallas Morning News did. They probably did not. But anyway, fun.
It's amazing when you think about that many arrests, and all just to keep a silent promise made to President Kennedy. Now, there have certainly been many rewards, but there have also been many major sacrifices that you've made. And when I speak to other researchers who have been on these issues for, 30, 40, 50 years, they all have heartbreaking stories of real sacrifice. How do you balance the great work you've done with the sacrifices that you've made?
Well, that's the thing, too. People, on the other side, and other researchers who are not supportive of my work, and there are some, say, oh, Groden's just in it for the money. Yeah, well, I was making a lot of money as a photo optics expert in New York, and I gave up that job to do this. I could never, ever buy back the amount of money that I've lost on this case. But the worst thing I've had to do is to be away from my children as they grew up. I have 4 kids, 6 grandkids, and they're all up in the Philadelphia area now. But as they were growing up, I was working on the case, and sometimes I wasn't there. I missed my daughter's first steps when I was in Dallas. So yeah, it's been a problem. My wife Christine, who unfortunately passed away 4 years ago, was always extremely supportive of my work. I could not have done anything that I did if it hadn't been for her. And we made a decision some years ago that I would move down to Dallas. She would stay up there with the kids. I moved down to Dallas and try to be a voice of reason in this case. We had 2 things in Dallas. We had the other side, the 6th Floor Museum, Downtown Dallas, Inc., organizations like that are all the cover-up, and the Dallas Morning News, too. And we had the people I mentioned before that had no credibility. We needed a voice of reason. We needed someone who knew the case, and there needed to be someone here. And Chrissy and I decided that I would come down here and do this, and I did. Well, I don't regret it for a minute. I do regret not seeing my kids grow up and all the time I gave up with my wife and like that. But that's, that was the price I had to pay more than anything else. The price was not so much financial as anything else. And so I will tell you, as an aside, several years ago, there's a fellow by the name of Robert Hayes, who was the director of the Depository Museum, the Kennedy Museum in the Book Depository building. And he offered me the job to replace him as the director of the 6th floor. And I was honored, and I said, well, yeah, how much does it pay? And he told me, and it was considerable. And they said, one thing, Robert, you're not going to be able to tell people about the conspiracy. You've got to keep quiet about it. And I said, well, thanks, but no thanks. And I turned it down. It would have been much more comfortable because I would have had an office indoors instead of being outside on the knoll. But it was clear that nothing I would say was ever going to change their point of view and their cover-up. So I turned it down, and years later I came down to Dallas anyway, but not to lie. And I'm proud of that. Sometimes I feel very foolish because it was over $250,000 a year. But yeah, what can you do?
Well, you've certainly done a lot. And speaking of that, you'll be speaking at the JFK Assassination Conference this year. Is that correct? I'm
speaking at one of them. There's actually going to be 4 of them, but I'm speaking at one. Judith Baker was Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend in New Orleans, and she knows a lot about the case and the history of it. And for the last several years, she's come forward and is defending Lee Oswald's memory, and she has asked me to do it, and I'm very, very honored. Several years ago, the COPA, the Coalition on Political Assassinations, gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award, which I honor. I love it. It's one of my proudest possessions. Well, I found out that Judith is giving me another Lifetime Achievement Award in this November, next week, and I'm really honored about that. I think I'm the first person to get 2 of them. Well, Ian Fleming said you only live twice, so with 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards.
And I've heard the new award is named after Jim Garrison and Mark Lane. Is that correct?
I don't know. I know nothing about it. I simply was told it was going to happen. I guess just to make sure I was going to be there.
Right, absolutely. But you do have to be there.
Well,
so you have to be really honored by this, right?
Oh, of course it is. Of course, I'm greatly honored. To be acknowledged for more than a half centuries of work, that means a lot to me. There's times when I stop and I think and wondered, would I ever really accomplish anything? And then I look at the fact that I've written 14 publications, 8 actually hardcover books and major softcover books. I've released through the years 2,200 photographs on the assassination. which the government should have released and did not. The Warren Commission should have published every one of these, and they didn't. I'm very, very proud of that. I made the photographic record of the case available, not just the films, but the still photographs as well. As long as I'm breathing, I'll be doing this. I'm keeping my promise to President Kennedy. And I have a fellow who works with me in Dealey Plaza. Marshall Evans is his name. And
we had Marshall on the show a few months ago. Great guy.
Oh, was he? Oh, great. Well, Marshall and I joke about the fact that when I kick the bucket, that he's going to have me stuffed and wheel me out into Dealey Plaza so I can do that.
Oh, no.
Even after I'm gone.
Robert, it's nice to be honored by, say, the citizenry or the media or whoever, but it has to be a special honor to be recognized by your peers, by those who've been in the trenches with you for decades, and those who truly know what you've accomplished.
Oh, it certainly is. It certainly is. When I got the first Lifetime Achievement Award from COPA, I actually broke down into tears. I was actually crying. I was so honored by it, and that was decades and decades ago. And I treasure the fact that I got this award, and I keep it packed up because I don't want to take a chance of anything happening to it. It means so much to me. I've photographed it, so I have that. But to get that sort of an award twice means the world to me. It's you're right. To be recognized by the people that are doing what you're doing, you can't top that.
And speaking of those peers, I ask this to everyone on a JFK-related show that I do. So, other than your own, what are the 3 most important JFK works that someone should read?
Oh, boy. Well, that's a tough one because most of the really, really good ones are out of print. You can't get them. And so all of my books are out of print, except for JFK Absolute Proof, the current one. And even that one is temporarily out of print until it gets reprinted, and we're negotiating to do that now. But JFK Absolute Proof has 1,000 photographs in it. 1,000 photographs. About 900 of which have never been published before. And, the stuff was suppressed for all these years because I was under a non-disclosure agreement with the government because of my work for the House Assassinations Committee, the Rockefeller Commission, the Assassination Records Review Board, all of those. In any case, some years ago, just a few years ago, the non-disclosure agreement was ruled unenforceable and illegal. And that just let the floodgates open for me. And the book, which was going to have about 600 photographs, ended up having over 1,000. And color throughout the whole bit. The book weighs 4 pounds. That's how much stuff is in it. But the thing is that right now it's not really even available. It will be hopefully again soon. In the 14 publications I've had, all told, including newspapers, magazines, books, and the 3 DVD documentaries that I've produced through the years, I've made the stuff available to researchers who want to know the case and see for themselves what's going on here. And that's why I'm so angry about the idiots who claim that that they don't know what they're talking about, yet they claim that they do, and they create so much false impressions of the actual photographic evidence. It's infuriating to me, but they do it.
Are there any of the newer authors, say someone from the last 20, 25 years, whose work you've really enjoyed?
There are some of them. Unfortunately, at the moment, I'm having trouble remembering who they are. There's Josiah Thompson, back in 1966, wrote a book called 6 Seconds in Dallas, which is one of the great early books on the case. Harold Weisberg's books are difficult to read, but they contain a lot of very important, valuable evidence in the case. Sylvia Marr's book, Accessories After the Fact, is a great primer for people who want to learn the basic stuff from all the way back then in the 60s. There's one book which I really admire, and for the life of me I can't think of the name of the darn thing. It's JFK and the Unspeakable: Why He Died and How It Matters. Why it matters. That of the current books now, that's probably about the very best. So there's that, and then there's of course I'd be more than happy to promote JFK Absolute Proof, which I'm very proud of. That book is like one of my kids.
Oh, absolutely. Now, when will the new edition of JFK Absolute Proof be out?
I don't know. Here's the thing. It's probably the most expensive book ever to cost to have printed. It's on acid-free, semi-gloss paper throughout the entire book, every page. It has color throughout and has more than 1,000 photographs in it. With all of that, it's a very expensive book to print. We never had enough copies to go into bookstores, and the only place it was ever really available was in Dealey Plaza when I was selling it, or on Amazon. And those were the two places it was available, but nowhere else. So it was somewhat limited. There were supposed to be 20,000 copies done, and through a printing error, they only did 2,000 copies. And they went like hotcakes. They were just gone. I think there's only 40 copies left. So I'm hoping that it'll get reprinted. I hope it'll be reprinted within the next couple of months. But as of now, I don't have an agreement with a publisher and a printer. So I have to wait. I don't have the money to do it myself. If I did, believe me, I would. But that's where I stand with it. I'd love to see it out again. I'd love to see everybody who's interested in the case be able to obtain the photographic evidence for themselves. That's what I've done. There's this trilogy. There's The Killing of a President, The Search for Lee Harvey Oswald, and now JFK Absolute Proof. Between those three books, the last three books I've written, there's 2,200 photographs in it. That's a lot. The fact that stuff exists at all is a miracle.
Oh, it is a miracle, and it's a miracle that the amount of high-level research being done still goes on. Yet I've had a few high school students and college students ask me why this is still important 50 years later, 50-plus years. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Why does the JFK assassination still matter?
It matters for several reasons. First of all, he was our president. He was murdered, and the federal government covered it up. For whatever reason, they covered it up. They lied about what happened. They buried evidence. That matters. Second of all, President Kennedy was pulling out of Vietnam. He realized it was a mistake that was unwinnable, and he wanted us out of there, and he was going to get out right after the 1964 election. That's why he was killed. That's one of the two major reasons why he was killed. It matters because 58,000 American soldiers died, so that Lyndon Johnson could make more money, and the CIA could get the war that they wanted. This is a fact, and it's very, very sad. But that matters. That's why JFK matters. As far as I'm concerned, he's the last real president we ever had. And here's a man who came from privilege and ignored that privilege because he wanted to make the American dream a reality for all people. And you have to admire that. Now, my feeling is that we as a people owe it to him to find out what really happened and expose it. That's what I've been trying to do now for a half a century.
If there's anyone out there, and I'm sure there is, if there's anyone out there who would like to find more information about you or would like to get information on where they can find your work, how can they go about doing that?
Well, thank you for asking. I have a website. It's a new website. My old one was hacked by a guy who is taking orders for books, and as far as I can tell, is never delivering them. He does not have my permission to use my name or likeness, but he's doing it, and he's gotten away with it, and nobody is willing to do anything about it, and that's a problem. So we started a new website, and the new website is jfkassassinationtruth.com. I'll repeat that a couple of times. jfkassassinationtruth.com. It's a new, much better presentation than I had before because I didn't have the time to really deal with it. And we have a really, really great guy named Jason Sullivan who has become the webmaster on this, and he is updating it and keeping it up. So if people want to learn about what's happening in the case, that's a great place to go. jfkassassinationtruth.com. Well, there's that, and also, if anyone is going to be coming down to Dealey Plaza to visit in Dallas for whatever reason, any Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, with very few exceptions, as long as it's not raining or snowing, come to Dealey Plaza. I'm a no. I'll be glad to talk with you. I've been doing it now for a quarter century, and I'm glad to do it. It's my dedication to the case is being there and doing that for people who care and want to learn. If you go up to the 6-Foot Museum, enjoy what you see. Don't listen to the crap that they tell you. It's a lie. They know that they're lying, but they get away with it because there's really no one to challenge them except me. I'm a no. And, people, they're just impressed with the fact that they're indoors and I'm outdoors. So what can I say?
Well, we'll have a link on the website, MidnightRiderNews.com, to your site, JFKAssassinationTruth.com, and we'd love to have you on again in the new year.
Well, I can't see any reason why not. I appreciate the fact that you care about it and that you're doing shows to expose the lie. That's very, 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 very important. And for those of you who are listening, that are standard regular listeners to ST and the Night Rider show, Midnight Rider show, thank you for listening. Thanks for caring. Thanks for absorbing what there is to be said. It's important.
Well, I can assure you, Robert, and I can make a promise to you today that this case will never die on this show. It's one of our main issues, and it will be so for the remainder of the show.
Well, don't ever let that desire to learn about this go away. We need more people like you. We need more people who care. And what amazes me sometimes is little kids in the plaza, 10, 12, 15 years old, who know more about this than their parents do. It's wonderful to see that they want to learn, because we're going to need people. I've got all four of my kids could carry on my work. They're not going to, and I can't blame them. They have lives of their own, and this is my choice, not theirs. I don't know where the next generations could be coming from, but let's hope that they do come, and let's hope that the issue doesn't lie until we learn it all.
Well, we absolutely will not stop working, and we hope that you don't either.
Well, it's an honor to be able to do it. If it wasn't for some radio shows through the years, we never would have gotten as far as we did, because the public doesn't get to hear about this or read about this in the major news media. They avoid it like the plague. And with the stuff that's been released, thanks to the Assassination Records Review Board 25 years ago, the stuff has just been released now in the last couple of weeks. It's certainly not everything. There's a lot of stuff that they're withholding, a lot more than they're admitting to. There's a list of stuff that we know is there that they have not released. So, let's hope that we do eventually get it all. We'll talk about that next time.
We absolutely will. Robert, thank you for being on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and more power to you. And as I've said many times through the years, may all the truth be known soon. Let me change that. May all the truth be known now.
What a great night. That was Robert Groden. This is ST Patrick. I'm on the Midnight Rider News Show. We'll be right back. Who were the first researchers out of the box to question the Warren Commission's version of the JFK assassination? What obstacles did they have to face? How did their research bind them and inspire their work to this day? And just what did Randy Benson buy at the last Hurrah bookstore? You won't believe it.
This is Randy Benson, director, producer, and writer of the documentary film The Searchers. To hear more about The Searchers, listen to episode 9 of the Midnight Rider News Show.
I would like to thank Robert Groden for being on the show tonight. I'd like to remind everyone that our archives can be accessed for free at MidnightRiderNews.com. That's MidnightWriterNews.com. We have a few more shows remaining in our first annual JFK month, so please keep listening. One of the themes Robert and I touched on this evening was the idea of sacrificing for truth. Robert very candidly discussed the time away from his wife, the time lost with his kids, the financial losses for positions he turned down. It's hard to imagine turning down a 6-digit offer from the Texas School Book Depository, but he did. I think that's one of those offers where we believe everyone should turn it down out of principle. But if it were made to us, we would probably find a reason why we had to take it. Robert Groden turned it down. Robert Groden is one of the original searchers, someone who hasn't been a biannual book guy. He doesn't have as many income streams as someone who's grown up professionally in the online world. Robert sits humbly in Dealey Plaza every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, answering questions, entertaining pet theories, and selling his work piece by piece. Dallas city officials have made this increasingly difficult. Other researchers have made this increasingly difficult. And the passage of years away from 1963 continues to make this increasingly difficult. I've lamented the annual departures of the old school researchers. They put in the time, made the hundreds of phone calls, drove the thousands of miles, sought out the best Xerox in town, and sent pictures out from every department store in their area. The research today is still hard, but in different ways. Much of it can be done alone, as evidenced by the thousands currently pouring through the digital documents uploaded by the National Archives. In Robert Groden's day, in the days of Mae Brussel and Ralph Epperson, Penn Jones, Sylvia Marr, John Lear, William Cooper, Lynn Kolodny, Al Cuppett, Walt Brown, John Judge, Mark Lane, Josiah Thompson, Eustace Mullins, and countless others, you had to make links and connections. You had to meet and talk to people, or you were getting nowhere. Researchers enjoyed meeting one another and sharing files and copies of VHS tapes. We should be eternally grateful that they did what they did then, so we can do what we do now. What will we be able to offer in 30 or 40 years? Will we simply be gatherers and loggers, or will we be responsible for original finds and original thought? The premier goal for Midnight Rider News has always been education. That was the field from which the show originated. But we also like to think we choose to just think differently. That will be expressed even further as the show grows and evolves throughout 2018. I want to thank Robert Groden for a great interview and for opening up and sharing his personal experiences as well. Research isn't just a measure of how well you can obtain and then analyze papers. It becomes a lifestyle. It allows for incredible finds and lost moments, lifetime achievement awards and lost salaries, fights with researchers, fights with publishers, fights with city officials, and friendships that last a lifetime. From the other side of the mountain, on the best side of midnight, I wish you peace.
The Midnight Rider News Show with St. Patrick is a production of MidnightRiderNews.com. Copyright belongs to St. Patrick and all rights reserved. You can email us at midnightridernews@gmail.com. And be sure to visit MidnightRiderNews.com for the best in alternative historical analysis. This is Leanne saying thank you for listening, have a great night, and always remember, when life throws you lemons, throw them back and demand chocolate.